He's a surgeon, teacher, futurist, innovator, entrepreneur, and an evangelist in augmented and virtual reality. He made world headline news in 2014 by streaming a live operation using Google Glass to 14,000 students and trainees across 132 countries. And on April 14th, 2016, he performed the world's first virtual reality operation, which was watched by 55,000 people in 140 countries and reached 4.5 million on Twitter. He's an award-winning surgeon and trainer. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Shafi Ahmed.
Dámy i gospoda, zaman I česta va Buddha va Bulgaria. I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much. That's taken at least an hour of learning. So I'm going to talk a little about, not about VR and global surgical training, more about healthcare in general. I'm giving this talk about VR tomorrow on the Red Stage at 1:30 about more insight about my role in global health and equitable healthcare. So we have, I guess, we're living in amazing times. And amazing times are, of course, what the World Economic Forum chair has described as the fourth industrial revolution. And this is the most exciting time to be in medicine. I'm a surgeon, I'm a cancer specialist, and I find at the moment it's an incredible time to be involved in technology with its impact and innovation in how we empower people going forward. It's the influence of AI, robotics, big data, big pharma, things like biosensors, pharmacogenomics, all coming and converging at a time that will major impact humankind around the world. And this is an exciting time to be around, of course. The other thing I talk about is how we disrupt medical practice and education. We have to think about the background, and we've got to disrupt dogma and tradition. Clinicians, clinical practice are immersed in dogma and tradition. We don't want to change. I'm impressed by Bulgaria. You had amazing people here at the beginning, the entire fraternity, the presidents, the ministers. And actually, it's quite a good enabler to think about how you're going to evoke change in this world that we live in. So please do think about disrupting your minds and moving on to a world of exponential medicine. Of course, we are governed by Moore's law. Computers became more powerful. Your smartphone in your pocket is rapidly expanding in its memory and its capacity constantly. And remember, we're approaching this area of exponential growth in medicine, and how we interact with that makes a challenge for all of us. And we're approaching what some people called singularity, at the point at which we will become, or computers will become, better than doctors or surgeons. Let's go back and look at history. 5,000 years ago, the ancient Greeks were seeing patients, holding their hands, looking at them, talking to them. We're obsessed with the human touch, the human flavor of clinical practice. Even now, we still think that's important. My question to all of you, does that need to be disrupted? Is that essential for clinical practice? You see, back in 1925, they figured it out. They figured they would actually think about radio diagnosis, the elements of telemedicine, remote monitoring, remote thing. And this was a picture from at least 50 or 60 years ago. We're moving on rapidly. We're moving on to this area here. If you see people now using telephone consultations, telephone call to a patient, much happier, no hand touching, no sort of the warm feeling. It's about connecting people. Also, we use Skype to connect people now in primary care, in practice. In the UK, we use it all the time to see our patients. Suddenly, we're disrupting the pure doctor-patient relationship that we've all accepted as being the best. What about other values? Of course, we'll have smartphones and apps. We want instantaneous gratification. We want to be able to get a doctor straight away, or a physician. Actually, apps coming out like this, Push Doctor, Babylon Health, allow you to one click to access healthcare to find a person. Okay? And that's what we need. We need access to healthcare immediately, rather than waiting for appointments. Do we have to be there? Why not use a robot to do a ward round to see your patients? This is me last week coming to my clinic, my operating theatre.
I'll open the door.
This is the Royal London Hospital where I work.
So we're
I thought I'd disrupt. I thought I'd do something quite different.
Hey, you're getting too close, mate. Slow down.
I was controlling this from another hospital. I could be here in Bulgaria, communicating with my team. In fact, I did that yesterday with one of these devices. Here's my theatre where I operate. Here we go. I can communicate with my team now, remotely, using just a smartphone, right? It seemed strange initially that actually, after about 30 seconds, everyone thought it was normal. It was strange behavior. I thought it was abnormal, but within a minute or two, everyone accepted that I was there.
Introductions. Simon Surgeon, who's next?
So the doctor-patient relationship is changing and evolving constantly. We're obsessed with communication and social media. We all are. We're using FaceTime. We're using WhatsApp. But now we're calling it virtual time. What about connecting in the virtual space? I work in virtual reality. How about connecting in a virtual environment remotely? And as you've seen, now we're creating avatars with face recognition where you can transport yourself in VR to another part of the world, connecting with humans. Suddenly, it won't be real. They call me a virtual surgeon. I think we're all virtual, and we're going to be much more virtual going forward. So we're now producing software technology that enables it to be holoportation, actually transported visually and in VR into another part of the world. Imagine that. If you want to get some advice from somebody from abroad, they can just transport themselves into your operating theatre and you can be together in the same environment. That's what's happening going forward. AR and VR is big. We know that. There's a huge amount of money being thrown at AR and VR, a lot of hype around the whole area. And I've been working AR and VR for the last 2 or 3 years, working out how do we figure it out? How do we work this hardware and the software solutions? We know already that VR is useful in clinical practice to prevent phobias or help people with phobias to spiders and whatever. It's also useful for people in the army who've been in military services who have post-traumatic stress disorder. They come back and actually helped by virtual reality. It's so supported pain relief. Patients who have operations, for example, who require painkillers, they may require less painkillers going forward using the power of virtual reality. Last year, I decided to invite the world to our operating theatre. 2 years ago, I used the Google Glass wearable technology to do live operation around the globe. And we've got to think bigger. We've got to think about the globe as a whole. We all have knowledge which we want to share. But my feeling is we don't share with one person, not 2 persons, but thousands of people. That knowledge is then much more valuable across the globe. There's a huge problem in the globe. 5 billion people in the world don't have access to safe surgery, things we take for granted in the West. So we've got to think about how we figure this out. How do we scale up education? How do we democratize education?
This 360 camera rig allows immersion. People around the world using a low-cost technology, a simple VR headset, can actually immerse themselves in operating theatre around the world.
So I'll share more of that story around social media, VR, AR, and global training tomorrow. But what about education itself? Education and healthcare lends itself well to AR and VR. And this is really exciting. So the students I teach, I'm an associate dean of medical school. I run a medical school at Bart's Medical School. We have 2,000 students per year through my hospitals. They want to learn in a different way. They're younger, they're hungry for technology, so we'll think about how we bring that to them and transform and disrupt medical education. learn in different ways. We're going to use these technologies in a different way, and our students from today will be taught in a much different way. If you think about patients, about sensors, we're obsessed with Fitbits, Apple iBands, wrist, all the sensors that we see on a constant basis, hundreds of them, and we're supposed to be online the whole time and produce a lot of data going forward with this patient interaction. We've all got some of these. Most are useless, of course. Some may have some value because it's looking at well people, not sick people. So actually the Fitbits and things aren't really working out as they should be because we're not pushing it to the right people. In fact, we're now in a world of lots of different type sensors. There's the ingestibles, the pill cams you swallow that can look at your disease inside. Injectables, implanting little diodes under your skin which monitor glucose for 2 or 3 years by Profusa. Google themselves are producing cataract or lenses on the eye to look at glucose levels. So all these things are going to become more apparent and will be connected by Internet of Things, Internet of Medical Things. We have lots of data constantly produced in the future. The question for us is how do we make sense of it? How do we connect this whole idea? We move to a world of precision medicine and what's called personalized medicine. It's about N equals 1. In the past, we've talked about patient populations, a lot of clinical trials. But actually, we want to personalize medicine, to stratify that to one person, make sure it's effective treatment, and therefore the cost implication is better. We are redesigning clinical trials. We're redesigning the way we treat our patients on an individual level. Genome sequencing, amazing. A few years ago, it cost £100,000 to have a gene sequencing. Today, the cost has come down to $1,000. It's below $1,000 for a human genome to be sequenced. That's a game changer. In 2 or 3 years' time, it'll be $100. Suddenly, you can sequence the whole genome of everybody and make sense of this data. The problem, of course, is that it generates large amounts of data. So we've got to work out the analytics. What does it mean? How do we put some barriers, and how do we filter this information? How do we make it work for our patients? And that's the design for all of us to think about as an ecosystem, including people involved in computing, AI, medics, everything else. It requires some thought about this big data explosion that we're seeing. If we go to AI, AI is the most important thing in medicine. At the moment, the next 5 years, if you're not involved in AI already, get into AI. Okay? Because Mark Cuban said the first trillionaire in the world will have some involvement in AI. It'd be in the background, working for all of us, creating a way of diagnosis, managing our patients. And if you look at the past, of course, we've seen IBM Watson beating the chess champion many years ago. And then on the sort of program Jeopardy, a computer beat the champions on that. And more recently, it's about AlphaGo. It's Google and its whole DeepMind system. Watson, DeepMind, they're all working now, figuring out lots of data. How do we make it work? And what does it mean for the patient? How do we empower that patient going forward? We're obsessed with one click. It's one click Amazon. It's one click Just Eat. We want to speak to Echo. We want to speak to Google Home. We're obsessed with being much quicker and faster. But in medicine, we're still not quick enough. We're still quite slow and reserved. But our mentality, social conditioning, is one click mentality. If you have to do 2 or 3 clicks on the internet, you get bored, you go to a different page, right? It's become almost an obsession that we have with the internet. Therefore, what about chatbots? AI, have a phone. These are 2 elements. This is Ada and the Babylon Health System. It's a chatbot. It's like WhatsApp. You ask questions, it responds automatically. You talk to something, a computer, to get an answer. And that might take away a lot of problems of healthcare resources. Do you need to see a doctor for a cough? Do you need to see a doctor for a re-prescription? Do you need to see a doctor for common ailments that could theoretically be managed by an AI machine? This is happening already in the UK. This is the biggest selfie I've ever had, okay? These are 104 cameras creating my avatar. Each camera is 36 megapixels. So you can imagine the level of detail within that. And what we're doing with this, imagine this. Forget the chatbot. What about having your avatar, which is lifelike? Creating facial expressions, so it talks like you. Putting AI interface. Suddenly, when a patient's talk to this person, it would like talking to a human being. So away from chatbots onto AI, interface and avatars. And that's really exciting, and that's what we're doing at the moment, working out how do we figure this out. We're on a mission to break our planet, to go to Mars. Elon Musk's vision of 2022, of the first person going to Mars, is incredible. 50,000 Americans have signed up to go to Mars on that first day. I wish we could select who should go, but we can't. But however, they've selected themselves about this mission. So this is important to me about Mars, okay? The question is, how do we treat people on a different planet? Imagine this. You're someone going to Mars, you're on a flight somewhere between here and Mars. You have a problem, medical problem. Say you have a surgical problem, like appendicitis. How are we going to treat it? Have we thought about it? How are you going to treat somebody in zero gravity? How are you going to perform the operation? How are you going to treat that person? Well, actually, one of the things we could do is 3D print. We could 3D print our instruments. We could 3D print everything. So Made in Space, they sent the first 3D printer into space earlier this year, and they printed the first tool to work in space, to fix the ISS. Suddenly, 3D printing might be more valuable. It might be a way of overcoming some of the barriers of going to another planet. We can now create a nephron, the functioning part of a kidney. So now we can create new organs, slowly, okay? We can create skin, which will change the lives of patients with disease like burns victims and disfigurement. So now we're becoming the organ, the 3D printing is good, we're going to space, but actually we can start producing organs. Soon you'll find we won't need transplantation, renal transplants, cardiac transplants. We're going to change the emphasis. What about changing the head? You know this guy? He's about to perform the world's first head transplant this year, supposedly. We heard a lot of things about him. This is the patient he's going to operate on to take his head off to another head, all right? To another body. So that's amazing. The ethics behind that is quite difficult to understand. In terms of surgery, we're moving rapidly on. This is me doing this is a 3D glass I'm wearing to look at depth perception in the operating theater. This is a new system in China which allows 3D, but without any glasses. It has motion sensor capture on your head, so you can see the depth perception. And robotics is important, of course, because robotics is where we're going to go forward. If we go to Mars, someone has a problem, we can 3D print the instruments, we can do the operation remotely, autonomously, maybe using a robot in the future. These are the type of things we're creating to help ourselves to enable our patients to do better. So my question to you now is to think carefully. Would you want a robot to be your surgeon? Okay, I raised the whole topic last year because let's ask the question, how many of you would feel comfortable with a robot being a surgeon? Difficult one, right? The problem I have is this. Everyone gets into a car every day. You get into a car, you put the ignition on, and you drive. You never question once how that car was made. It was made by a robot. Every single bit was made by a robot. But we trust it with our lives because we're used to trusting it. Patients are like different. Uber cars, you can now get in Pittsburgh, get an Uber car to come to you on an app. It comes to you autonomously, no driver. You get in, it drops you off autonomously. The whole car industry is going to be amazing for us to work out where we go because it's asking the right questions. Are you going to be happy for an autonomous car to drive you A to B to work? It's less risk. It should save you. It'll save many more lives. Similarly, it's about doctors. Are we going to replace doctors? And indeed, the first human robot did an operation a year ago. It joined two bits of our together. Something that I never thought was going to be possible. I never thought my hands could be replaced. But clearly it can, with a robot that can do the operation. So already we're moving on to technical expertise in robotics. What about other doctors? Well, we've got to figure it out. Think about radiologists who read x-rays. Do you need to read an x-ray anymore, a chest x-ray? Would you rather not have a chest x-ray? Within a millisecond, it gets reported by an AI machine, which has looked at millions of scans and x-rays around the world, looking at algorithms, looking at pattern recognition, giving you an answer. That's what we don't want somebody to spend 3 or 4 days looking at an x-ray, writing a report. It's not good enough. So we'll redesign doctors' pathway. Dermatology, skin lesions. Already you can pick up an app, look at a skin lesion. It gives you diagnosis and treatment. So medicine will change in its essence. The last question to ask is about the future. This is back in 1924, and we talked about the radio doctor. Okay? In the future, we'll have a radio doctor. Actually, what we're going to have now is what's called a digital doctor. So my question to my medical students, where I teach and train, are we ready for that explosion? Are we ready for the new way of teaching and training our doctors? And actually, we may be. This is my hospital. It's 1,000 years old. It's been around a long time, one of the oldest medical schools in the world. But actually, we're designing new things. So we've now embedded something called Bart's X Medicine into my curriculum. So this year, I ran a course for the entire medical school. They weren't taught by physiologists. They weren't taught by biochemists or clinicians. They were taught by venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, app designers, developers, coders. And they're taught by people from Silicon Valley. My friends from Singularity in New York and Harvard beamed in live, talk about the future. Those students have gone forward now with idea generation, with mentorship. They've produced an idea, they've had a hackathon, and now the first team have won, who can give crowdsourced funding for 3 months over the summer to create something substantial for patient care. It's really disrupting education, because who do you want as future doctors? You want designers, thinkers, creative people who can enable people, who can create a design and have an idea and generate that idea to fruition. That's the leaders we want in medicine, not people traditionally who've gone through medical school. So we've got to disrupt that whole education system. So ultimately, the message, of course, is disrupt, don't accept dogma and tradition, particularly in healthcare, and technology enables all of us. Thank you very much.